Hey guys, Dave with First Place Auto Parts, and today we're going to take a look at what you should know before buying your classic car or truck. Look, buying a classic vehicle, it's an emotional purchase, but it can also be an expensive one. So today's video, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this 1978 Chevrolet C10 truck that was recently purchased by a friend of mine, and we're going to take a look at it and see if it was a good purchase and identify the things that you should be looking out for when you go to look at your classic car or truck that you want to buy. Now this truck was bought recently at a large auction, and when you buy at an auction, things are a little different than when you're looking at a picture on the internet. It's a tense place to buy a vehicle. This truck from 30 feet, it looks amazing. The paint's shiny, it's all there. It has some aftermarket wheels. It looks really good, but was the truck a good value? Let's go ahead and take a look at this truck a little bit closer, because really what the vehicle is, anything that's 40 or 50 years old, it's going to have some issues, right? These things rusted, there's a lot of chrome trim, there's a lot of parts that go to make up a classic car or truck. So the question is, was this a good buy? What should the current owner have looked for when he bought this truck? And what should you look for when you're buying yours? So let's go ahead and get started, take a walk around this truck and look at the key important things that are going to be big dollar items that you may have to fix later on down the road. Hey guys, if you like today's video, please consider subscribing to the First Place Auto Parts YouTube channel. We're going to continually be adding new videos every week where we show you how to put new parts on. We take a look at the latest parts that are available, and we go to some pretty cool car guy stuff I'm pretty sure you're going to want to see. When evaluating a classic car or truck, there's really two major component areas that you're going to want to take a look at. And the first one is the body. And the body encapsulates a lot of different things. Look, the quality of the paint, the chrome, is it all there? And do the body panels fit correctly? Those are all going to be important questions that you're going to want to answer. The second major area is going to be the drivetrain, or what we call the powertrain, which includes the engine, the transmission, and the rear end. So these are all things that will cost you potentially more money down the road to make ultimately what you're trying to achieve. So we want to make sure that these things are at the quality level that you're paying for. Look, there's nothing worse than the bad taste in your mouth of paying too much for a vehicle that you find out later needs a lot of work. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the areas that we have some concerns with this truck above and beyond the purchase price. Now, when talking paint, paint can be one of the most expensive things you can do to any older vehicle, and that is repainting it. Refinishing process of taking something down to bare metal, priming it, and repainting it can be very expensive. Look, it can cost you anywhere from $8,000, I've seen $20,000 paint jobs before on a classic vehicle. So if you're buying a vehicle that's been repainted, be doubly cautious, because paint can cover up a lot of sins in regards to bodywork. One of the first places I like to start when I'm looking at the paint of a vehicle is actually, I open up the door and look at the door jamb area. First question is, has it actually been painted? A truck like this that has the doors down at the bottom that have to be painted as well, does it match if there's been a color change? Also, the amount of time that someone spends on the door jambs tells me a lot about the quality and the amount of time they spend on the bigger items as well. One of the things you can see in this door jamb right here, yes, it's black, it's shiny in some areas, but it's also sprayed very dry right here. So it kind of bodes a little bit in regards to the amount of time that was spent on this paint job. Overall, from 30 feet, it looks really good. But when you look closer, you're going to see some areas that weren't painted very well or weren't masked off very well, and even some areas where they burned through the paint, like on the hood. And then the next thing you want to do is you want to get a small magnet such as this, and you want to go around the body in the traditional areas where rust will form, which is typically above the wheel well openings. On these C10s, they're particularly susceptible to rust on the bottoms of the doors, the rocker panels, and behind each front tire, the front tire and the rear tire. So what I'm going to do is take this magnet, and I'm just going to put it on the door here, and look, it sounds pretty good, it looks good, until I go over to this one. And when I go to the front fender, the sound is different, the way the magnet sounds when it attaches to the panel itself, but also the pull is different. And this might be difficult for you to see on camera. The pull that the magnet has on this front fender is far more than the pull that it has on this front of the door here. So there is a little bit of bondo in here, or filler. The previous owner has used either to fill a rust hole, or they put a patch panel in and they just finish it. But it's something that you want to know, because it helps you identify how solid the truck is, how much steel is in it versus how much has been repaired, possibly with bondo, which bondo is always going to fail at some point. It's going to bubble, it's going to fall out, it's going to crack. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to find a car or a body that has the least amount of filler possible. This truck overall, I've gone over the whole truck. The only area that I can find a little bit of body filler is at the bottom of the door, which for a northern truck, it's pretty darn good. So far the truck, it has paint on it, needs a little help. It's got a little bit of filler, but not much. Now let's take a look at the body panel fits and the gaps between the doors and the hood. And after the paint itself and the quality of the body and the body work, next thing we want to do is take a look at the gaps. And we'll start here at the front fender and the door where they meet. And we can see that this gap is fairly tight up here at the top. And as we work our way down, it gets larger and larger until we get all the way down to the rocker panel where the gap is pretty big. So either the door needs to be adjusted or the front fender needs to be adjusted. And what we'll do is we'll take a look at the hood, how the hood meets the fender, to determine which one needs to be adjusted. Either way, there's some adjustments needed. And right away, we can see that the hood is actually fitting higher than the front fender. So we've got some adjustment issues here. Hopefully it's just body mount, or where the actual body panels bolt to the chassis itself. Sometimes I've seen it in the past where frames have been bent, where core supports have changed, where the hood and the front fenders do not align. So that's one place that we want to look at when we're looking at a classic vehicle, is at the frame sections areas as well, because if something's messed up underneath, you'll never get these panels aligned properly. In this case, we had some alignment issues. My guess is that the door hinge bushings have not been replaced on this panel or on this door, which will allow this thing to sag. So someone's probably over adjusted this door, but we'll find out and take a look at those door hinge bushings here real quick. But right now we've got some alignment issues that we've got to correct. And to check if it's the door hinge bushings, what we want to do is we want to grab the door at the door handle and also underneath the door panel and just lift up slightly. And yeah, sure enough, these door hinges, these bushings are shot. So to try to align a panel with bad door hinge bushings, these will have to be replaced at some point, which means the door will have to come off. It's just something else to calculate into how much work you're willing to put into your new vehicle and what needs to be done. And one other thing that I noticed, this exterior door handle isn't even tight. This thing's loose as well. So look, it's more and more looking like this truck was probably shot with paint, put some wheels on and lowered, and put out for sale. Look, there's some finishing details, which if you don't mind doing, is a great thing. But just understand, paying top dollar for something like this, where you have additional work to do afterwards, it might be more than what the vehicle is worth. So just keep that in mind. And then beyond the body and the paint work, we want to look at the little things that make up the truck or the car itself, which includes all the emblems, the bumpers, and all the trim. Like, these things add up to big dollars over time. And one of the things we find with this truck is that this front bumper is mangled beyond use. Like, it's bent and it's tweaked. You're never going to get this thing back straight. So the new owner of this truck is going to have to replace this bumper at some point in time. The rest of the emblems look pretty new and they're all there. It's just going to be the TLC it's going to take afterwards. But definitely things like this bumper and the back bumper that's missing are going to be additional costs to your build. And then it's the little things like the glass. Is the glass all there? Is any of it broken? In this case, this windshield, it looks like the windshield wipers have either been used without any rubber on the windshield wiper itself, or somehow the windshield got scratched, but either way, it's gonna have to be replaced. Look, there's nothing more frustrating than looking through either a hazy or a scratched windshield. Also, when you're checking out the body, make sure you crawl underneath the vehicle. If you can pull the carpet back, even better, but you want to take a look at the floorboards to make sure that there aren't any holes in it or any shoddy repairs that were done later. This truck, the floorboard is actually pretty sound, so that's a good thing. You're gonna have to replace a windshield, but the floorboards are good. And when it comes to what drives your classic vehicle, you want to get under the hood and take a look. And there's a lot of different options and variations that these vehicles could have come with in regards to engines and transmissions. In this case, what we have is an engine bay that looks like it's been fairly well taken care of. But more importantly is, it's been painted fairly well. The exhaust manifolds were taken off. So overall, it's a clean appearance. But then you dig a little bit deeper and we start to see things on the firewall, like the undercoating that was sprayed along the body seams. It was sprayed fairly inaccurately and also was quite a mess. And also, this truck at one point in time was actually burgundy. So when we're looking at the paint, going back to paint, one of the things we want to do is make sure that everything has been correctly color coded and covered with the black paint. In this case, it was not. So it's a small item, but it's an item nonetheless that detracts a little bit from the overall appearance of the vehicle. Next, the thing you want to do is you want to take the oil fill cap off of the valve cover and take a look at the inside of the cap. Look, if there's a lot of sludge, that means that the oil may not have been changed very frequently, or you might have a lot of blow-by. The other thing you want to look out for is a milky appearance on this, which would indicate either really short trips where someone started it up and turned it off with a lot of frequency where it didn't burn off the water and acids, or worse yet, you might have a bad head gasket. So looking down into the valve cover at the top of the valves, but more importantly inside this cap, will tell you a lot. And here's another thing, guys. If they say the engine's been rebuilt, make sure you get receipts. If they say the transmission's been rebuilt, make sure you get receipts. Look, if they don't have receipts, you have to assume, honestly, it hasn't been done. Look, I'm not calling people a liar, But how many times have you seen an ad for a vehicle that said ran when parked, just needs a tune-up? The reality is it probably didn't run all that well when it was parked. It needs more than a tune-up. So don't take anybody for their word when it comes to rebuild engines, transmissions, or rear ends. Make sure you have receipts. If there's no receipts, you have to assume it didn't happen, and that's just make sure that you're getting what you paid for. And the last thing before you leave under the hood is pull the radiator cap off the radiator. Make sure there's coolant in there, which in this case there is, but also make sure there's no oil floating on top of the water, which could indicate a bad head gasket or even an intake gasket. Look, the powertrain can be expensive. You can do a lot of upgrades and make a vehicle faster, but if you have to do some repairs, those are going to be additional costs above and beyond what you buy the vehicle for. So these are really negotiation points. Just because a vehicle, whether it's a classic car or a classic truck, needs a few things fixed, look, these things are 50 years old. The chances are they're going to need a few things, but it's how much you pay for the vehicle up front versus the parts you're going to have to buy in your time that'll actually add up to the total cost involved. So make sure you check all the small things because they all add up to a big thing. And when you go to see your vehicle for the first time, request from the current owner that you see the vehicle when the engine is cold. You want to start a cold engine up and take a look at the tailpipes and make sure there's no smoke that comes out. Any blue smoke would indicate the valve stem seals need to be replaced, which was a very common issue on small block Chevys. Also, take a look inside the interior. If there's an oil pressure gauge, make sure that the oil pressure from hot to cold doesn't differ more than 10 to 15 psi. If it does, it's a good chance you've got some internal issues that you're going to have to look at in the engine. Also, make sure you check to make sure everything works. Your windshield wipers, your blower motor, does the heat work, or if it has AC, does that blow cold? Also, roll your windows up and down to make sure all the window mechanisms are there and are functioning properly. There's a lot of things to look at. It's an emotional buy, but at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is to make sure that you get the value for your vehicle. Don't let the emotions cloud your judgment. Look, there's nothing wrong with buying a vehicle, a classic vehicle in particular, that needs some stuff done to it. It's common. You just don't want to pay too much. And hopefully this video has helped you identify what some of those areas you need to look at are. Guys, I appreciate you watching this video, and when you need restoration or performance parts, go to our always open, easy to use 24/7 First Place Auto Parts website. There we have all the restoration parts you need for your classic American muscle car or truck, and a ton of performance items that you're going to want as well. I appreciate you watching this video, and until next time, keep the hammer down and keep it between the guardrails.